Thanks for joining me. I'm Megan, and today's practice is a combination of somatic yoga, so a gentle muscular reprogramming, and some slow flow yoga. And we're going to work on settling into our hips. So I like to think of a nice, juicy practice for your hips, and know that the hips are an area in our body where we tend to store emotion. So don't be surprised if things come up for you, and just notice and be present in whatever presents itself. And you will want to have a blanket and a couple of blocks if that's available to you. So we're going to get started on our back. Coming down, just hugging your knees into your chest and just do some playful rolls, just recognizing and feeling the back of your hips. You can sense your low back and come up your spine, feeling your shoulder blades. You might even rock your shoulders. So being playful is a nice way to enter our body and be present in this gift. And then we'll place the feet on the ground with the knees bent. We call this constructive rest. Your hips, knees, and ankles are in about the same line, and your feet are just far enough from the buttocks that you're not pushing the low back into the floor, but not so far out that your low back is arched or feels short and tight. So that nice in-between space. Pausing there just to land in your backside, and then place your hands on the front of the pelvis. We'll start with just a few belly breaths. So if it's comfortable, I invite you to breathe in a way that it feels like you're filling your abdomen, and you'll feel your hands rise. And breathe out and just feel that saturation leaving your body as the skin comes back towards the center of your abdomen. If you want to have more of a tactical feeling, you can even place the tips of the index fingers together and notice how as you breathe in, the index fingers slightly part. And on that expiration, the fingertips touch one another. Just being present in this sacred space of hips or pelvis, acknowledging it. And if there's a particular intention that you want to set, the pelvis is an area that holds two of our energy centers, both our Muladhara, which is at the base of the spine, your root chakra, and the Svadhisthana, which is right about where your hands are below the navel center, this sacred sacral area. And we just want to be present in these spaces, your grounding center, your emotional center. We start by recognizing Muladhara, and this is the place of safety and meeting all of our survival needs. And then as we move up into the Svadhisthana chakra, it becomes more about pleasure and passion. And pleasure can be attachment to things as well as wanting to get away from things. So this beautiful holy center in our body. I also sometimes refer to it as the heart womb. And let's get ready to begin to move. So we'll start by placing one hand on either hip. See if you can feel your hip bones, and you can use those bony landmarks. Take a breath in, and as you take a breath in, gently lift the left hip up towards the sky, or think of if you had a string on the front of that hip bone, you're lifting it up. And as you breathe out, let it come back down. And we're just going to alternate sides. So then feel your right hip. Breathe in, lift your right hip up, and breathe out, and slowly come back down. So it feels like you're just shifting your weight. As you lift the left hip, the weight shifts into the right side of the pelvis. And then you land equally on both sides. And then lifting the right hip, the weight shifts into the left and coming back down. So really almost like a gentle swimming motion. The Muladhara is the earth, and the Svadhisthana is the water. So you can invoke that watery feeling, that juicy feeling. Just begin to notice as you're doing this, land yourself in your feet. And if you find you're pushing a lot in your feet and really extending high up, allow the legs to be a little more relaxed and think of lifting from the hip point. So keeping the muscles in the legs relaxed, the feet are softly touching the earth. And as you're doing this, notice this rocking back and forth or this rotation of the hips. You might feel yourself roll through the sacred sacrum. Take one more to each side. And then land. We'll just do a full body stretch. Take your arms out, take your legs long. Inhale, stretch, hug the muscles to the bones, and exhale, sigh it out. So I call that the full body yawn. We're going to do 2 more of those. Inhale, hug the muscles, tighten the muscles to the bones. Stretch as long as you can, feel your back arching, and breathe out. Let everything just land. One more time. So feel the pelvis as the connection point between the lower body and the upper body, and you're stretching from either end. And let it go. So we're going to come back into that rocking motion, but we're going to add on to that. So now feel that left hip again and breathe in and begin to lift the left hip up. But as the left hip lifts, you're also going to start to lift the right hip. So go really slow, and you can do that super slow. And then the left hip will come down while the right hip's up. And we'll let the left hip land, or the buttocks, and then the right hip. So think of doing almost like a figure 8 movement. You lift the left hip, then let the left lift the right. Eventually the right takes over. The left's relaxed as it comes down, and then the right holds it all the way down to the ground. So what you can kind of start to notice is what I call the independent suspension of the butt cheeks. So notice if as you're lifting through the left, can you engage the muscles and the back of the buttocks and the back of the left thigh? The right is relaxed. And then somewhere as you begin to lift the right, you're going to switch that over. The left becomes relaxed. The right is engaged. And the left arrives first on the ground, and the right still holding it until it comes all the way down. So continue with just a few more of these, rolling through, just lifting as high as it feels comfortable for you. Sometimes it's nice to let the head move as well. And picture this figure 8 pattern or an infinity pattern moving your hips. And we're going to continue with this, but we'll just switch the direction that we start with. So more of a mind game than anything sometimes, but picture your right hip. And when you're ready, as you breathe in, lift up the right hip. Once that right hip begins to lift, you'll feel like it's lifting the left hip off the ground, and then they'll get to about an even height, and you'll switch it. Let the right side turn off. Left side is on and supportive as the right side comes down, and supports the left side all the way back down to the ground. And that complete release when you get back down. So we start right hip lifting, left hip comes up, right hip back and down, and the left hip. So notice which side is supporting you, and is there that, can you sense that switch if you drew a line down the midline of your body, dividing the right and the left, keeping the head and the jaw relaxed. You can find your end point, play with going as high as you'd like. So we start with the right lifting, left follows, right relaxes and comes down as the left supports it, and then it all relaxes. Feel free to do 1 or 2 more. Just noticing your breath. I like to release on the way down on the breath out. Last one. And landing. Hug your knees into your chest again. Take a little roll. And we'll place the feet on the floor. So we're going to do a true bridge pose now, but we'll add the upper body a little bit. So let your feet settle in. So we'll be lifting both hips at the same time. Take a breath in, and as you breathe in, Lift the pelvis off the floor just as high as you want to go, and notice if both sides are activating in the buttocks and the backs of the thighs. And breathe out and come all the way down. So start low. Breathe in. You might hug your inner thighs just a little bit. You might press into your heels to get a little more. That will motivate your hamstrings and your back of your thighs if you press into your heels. Lifting up and releasing down. Once you find a good, comfortable motion for your hips coming up and forward, you'll notice your low back shortening, but not too far to where there's discomfort. Then we'll add the arms. So as you breathe in and lift the pelvis, take the left arm overhead and turn your neck or turn your nose toward your right shoulder. So you're going to look opposite the arm that's extending. And as you breathe out, arm comes down and the head comes back to the center. So just connecting the upper body, the neck to the pelvis. Inhaling, your right arm comes overhead. We look to the left. And exhaling back. Do your best to keep that strength and the legs, the thighs, looking in the opposite direction of the arm. Got my friend here. He gets a little pet every time I reach back. Take your time. Come up as high as you'd like. Feel that invitation to engage, to feel your strength, and that complete release coming down, feeling yourself land again, that earth element. The water can float you up on the inhalation. You might even feel, remember how we were filling the abdomen, fill your abdomen, imagine that buoyancy. So make it easy on yourself. Fill the lungs, fill the belly, float up, let it out, and let yourself come back down. Do a few more. Last round. And coming down. We're going to draw just the right leg into the body. So now we're going to connect the lower half of the body. And if it's more comfortable for your back to keep the left leg bent with the foot on the floor, do that. Otherwise, I invite you to extend the left leg to stretch out the front of the hip flexors, but see what works for you. Take that right leg in and first just move it side to side a little bit. Think of playing with the space in the front of the hip crease. You can feel that compression there. Go side to side, back to front. And if it's any sort of a stretch to hold the back of your thigh, please feel free to use a strap around your thigh. So you'll know, because your shoulders or your neck will be coming off the floor. I want to keep the back soft and relaxed. We're going to take the leg and extend it up. So again, there's an opportunity here to keep your hands to the back of the thigh or use a strap. You can also just let your hands rest and let the leg hold itself. You're going to take your toes into a pointed position. So think of the front of the ankle opening up, the back, your calf is tight, and then just wiggle your toes. And notice, it sounds odd, we're doing a hips class, I get that, but notice when you move your toes, and we're going to keep the position of the foot in what we call plantar flexion. Do you feel this all the way to your hip, or how far down your leg can you feel that? And then we'll just switch the position. You're going to draw the heel up towards the sky, the front of the foot towards your shin. So now you're stretching the back of the calf and your Achilles. And wiggle the toes again. And notice, do you feel that all the way through your lower leg, or can you feel it in your thigh to your hip? I call this part my body prayer. So as you're doing that, say thank you to your feet, because your feet are your feelers for your pelvis. They're your feelers for your spine as well. And then we'll just gently take the toes up towards the sky, or take this as the plantar flexion and release, and then dorsiflexion and release. And if you're doing this to your breath, the inhalation is the effort into the plantar flexion, release on the exhale, and then the dorsiflexion. So we're really going softly, but notice this from the point of your hips. And if you want more bend in your knee, you're welcome to do that. And then we're going to just take the ankle slowly around in circles. So ankle mobility is really an important part of having healthy, comfortable hips and back and spine. You can switch the direction. Remember that idea of play, being playful. You can draw smiley faces with your toes if you'd like. And then let the lower leg drop down. So again, you could be holding the leg or you can just let the leg do this on its own. That will require a little more muscle. But now we're going to work with the knee joint. So as you breathe in, you're going to extend up as high as you can go. What you want to watch when you're doing this is that your thigh is not way back here. You want to keep your thigh bone 90 degrees from the floor. Think the kneecap is right in front of the hip. So not back here, but straight up and down. And then that way you can go more into a full extension. So if I'm back here, I really can't extend and get into the muscles that are in my thigh attaching to my hip. So we're thinking of our knee joint now and saying nice things to the knee joint, that joint just above the hips, right? And there's a lot of interplay between ankles and hips and knees and hips. Just bending, and I'm extending on the inhalation and slow release on the exhalation. Notice the muscles in your thigh. Last one. Relax that. And then just let your lower leg dangle and think of your hip crease, so the whole circumference of the hip, and you're going to make slow circles all the way around. But really slow. Think of that water element. It's like you don't want to put too many ripples on it. And you also want to watch, we're not rolling the whole pelvis from side to side. We're moving from the hip crease. Just feel that out. And you can go in both directions. So locate yourself right in the space where the leg connects to your hips. Imagine that nice big femur bone coming into your hip socket. A lovely strong joint. And then we're going to pause. Hug that right leg in again just for a moment. Draw your left leg in if it's extended, and cross your right ankle on your left thigh. So now our hip is in external rotation. I like to keep a little more active engagement in the right leg, which means flexing the foot, hug the inner thighs together. And then we're going to arch and curl to start. So as you breathe in, press the tailbone down. Think of lifting the low back. And as you breathe out, press the low back down and lift the tailbone. So notice how just the arching of the low back and the curling of the low back creates a little bit of sensation in your right hip, perhaps. Just kind of a little warm up here. Take a few more arching curls. Feel free to keep your left foot on the floor, or I invite you to lift the left foot up. And now let the right leg relax more, and let the left leg take the right leg for a little ride. So you can go side to side, front to back. So you're going to feel those hip circles in the right leg again, but now the right leg is passive and the left leg is just playing with the mobility in that right hip. And then feel free to pause either with the foot on the floor, or if you'd like to draw it in more, you can put your hands or something behind your left thigh. Threading the needle, being still and present, whatever presents itself. Take 3 rounds of breath. And when your mind wanders, just bring it back to sensations in the body or the feeling of your breath. Or even just noticing what it is you're thinking about. We'll cross the back of the right thigh on top of the left thigh, just like you're sitting in a chair. And then hug the knees in again. Feel free to let the tailbone lift and do those rolls like we did in the beginning, where we're just rolling our low back on the ground. If it's uncomfortable, you can come back to doing it with the legs uncrossed as we did before. Just roll around. Familiarize yourself with your hips again, the back side resting on the ground. You get playful and roll from side to side. Then uncross the legs. There's one more movement we're going to do with the right leg. This time we'll want both knees bent with feet on the floor, and you'll want to widen your feet a little bit wider than your hips. We're going to work with internal rotation of the right leg. So as you breathe in, tip onto the big toe side of the right leg and draw the right thigh bone across the center line of your body or towards the center of your mat, and imagine gently taking the right knee forward towards the left toes. And as you breathe out, lift it back up. So it's this coming in, it's like a half of a windshield wiper if you're used to doing windshield wipers. But I'm going to keep my pelvis on the ground and lengthen the thigh. And exhale, come back. Reaching that right leg across. And then coming back. Let's do it in movement a few times. So we're feeling that internal rotation of the hip. And in this one, in a rest, I'll bring my block in so I can show how I like to prop it. But you're going to eventually take that right leg in and let it fall. So if there's discomfort, you could put a block underneath your inner right thigh. And if you want more stretch, but also support, then what you can do is put your left foot on your right thigh. So now the weight of the left leg is taking the right thigh and do a little bit deeper stretch, but it's a bit much for me. So I like to put a block underneath the left thigh to support it. Put it on its side there. There we go. I like to add the upper body to this one. So feel free to take your right arm up overhead and just feel that lengthening through your right side. So whether you're using your left leg or just keeping the left leg on the ground and being here, if you're not using your left leg on your right, let the left leg fall inward. So internal rotation of both legs. So there. And we'll take about 5 breaths here. Acknowledging, again, whatever it is you feel or whatever comes up. You can breathe into your right lung, say hello, and then release it. Take left foot off if it's on there. Bring your right leg back up. We're going to be switching sides and doing all that on the other side. But before you do, just take both legs out long. Let your arms come to your sides. Think of taking a mini shavasana in between here, that relaxation pose. But staying present in your right and left side, and just notice the space from your toes through your hips. Just noticing any changes that have taken place between the right and the left. Allowing your whole back body to land into the ground. And just locating yourself in any sensations. What's the same, what's changed. Particularly if you compare the right and the left sides. Do you feel more connected in your right leg or your left leg, or is one heavier, lighter, or longer, or shorter? Take a big breath in, full body yawn, reach, hug, and exhale. Let it all go. So we're ready to do the second side. So you can start with your knees bent again, feet on the ground, draw the left leg into your body. You can hold the back of the thigh or the shin, and right foot can stay on the ground for more comfort for the low back, or you're welcome to extend the right leg as well, stretch the top of the thigh. Just some small, but I call micro movements, just a little bit of rocking back and forth or front to back. Just beginning to open up the back of the left hip. And perhaps the front of the right, just noticing. And we're going to go into that extended position with the left leg. So it may not be full extension for you. You can keep the knee bent. All depends where you're comfortable. But take the leg as long as you can, and then take the foot into that plantar flexion. So imagine reaching the ball of the foot up towards the sky. Keep that so the front of your ankle's open. You might feel some tightness in the back of the calf. And then just wiggle your toes. I think your toes are having a little dance up there. And in that dance, they're asking your hips, would you like to come and partner with me? They're having a little conversation. And our feet tend to be pretty locked in most of the day in shoes, so they don't always get to communicate as well as they could with our hips. And we'll switch the position of the ankle, draw the top of the foot toward your shin, press through your heel like you're pushing on a pedal. Keep that and wiggle the toes again. And perhaps stay tuned. There might be lots of sensation there. But notice how far down the leg you can feel that sensation. Is it just in the foot, the ankle? Do you feel it in the lower leg or all the way to the upper leg, perhaps even in the hip? So I feel mine all the way in the outer left hip. Feel that connection, foot to hip. And then we'll just take the ankle and move it a little bit as you breathe in. Reach into the plantar flexion. As you breathe out, just release it. Then breathe in, come into the dorsiflexion, drawing the top of the shin towards you, and release. Just back and forth. And is there a response from the muscles in your shin and your calf, but also from your thigh as you just move your ankle? Healthy mobile ankles really add to the happy hips. And then we'll slowly take the ankle around in circles. Remembering this is what I call my body prayer. So as I'm doing this one, I'm saying thank you, ankles and feet, for all the lovely places you've taken me and hopefully will take me. Rolling them around, you can switch the direction of the circles. And relax the ankle. We're going to come into our lovely left knee joint. So you can drop the lower leg down. Once again, if it's more comfortable to support your leg with your arms, do that, but just watch you're not lifting your shoulders and your neck. Let those shoulder blades relax. Otherwise, I like to use the strength of my leg muscles to hold it there. You don't want the leg back here, so take it forward just a little bit so the thigh bone is 90 degrees from the floor. And then breathe in and extend. Lower leg up. Breathe out, slowly let the lower leg come down. So we're in the knee joint. And our job when we come into the joints is just to notice what they're joining. The knee joining the lower leg and upper leg. But perhaps you feel it all the way into the ankle or the hip. Look more than one joint away and see what you feel. Exhaling down and inhaling into the extension. Can you sense the muscles in the front of the thigh and the back of the thigh? And maybe even the attachment points where they come into the hip. Let the lower leg rest, let it dangle. And then think of the circumference of your hip crease and begin to slowly make circles all the way around. I like to imagine maybe you're baking and you're stirring in that butter, something really yummy and sweet. Going slow so you can feel all the way around the turns, and you can switch the direction. And maybe you noticed one hip was a little more friendly when you went to take it around. That's okay. We're coming all the way back around. And then we'll stop. Just hug that leg in one more time. Give it a little squeeze. And then we're going to slide that right leg in if it's extended. Cross the left ankle on the right thigh. So here we are in that thread the needle again. Pausing just to feel that. Sometimes what happens is the left hip crease will come way up. So you can take your hand and gently press that left hip crease towards the front of your mat. So you're keeping your hips level. We'll do that arch and curl again. So breathe in. Think of pressing your tailbone down and lifting the low back and low ribs. So your pelvis is going into a forward or an anterior tilt. And as you breathe out, come into the posterior tilt, lift your tailbone, press low back and low ribs down. So you'll shorten the space from your lower abdomen to your chest. So we inhale, fill the abdomen. Think of the breathing we did in the very beginning. Let the abdomen float up, let the low back float up. Breathe out, draw the abdomen in, and feel the low back lengthen. So it's a movement of the whole pelvis, but be very present in that left hip, noticing how you're getting little changes in the stretch as you go back and forth. And I'm more engaged right now, so I'm hugging my inner thighs together. So the left leg, the muscles are hugging the bones. You can also press through your left heel a little bit. All right, once the rocking's done, if it's comfortable for you, Lift your right leg off the ground, let the left leg relax, and just take a ride on the right leg. So it could be a side to side movement, back and forth, or full circles. You might feel some interesting stretching going on in the back of the buttocks and the side of the hip. And the right leg is doing a little strengthening, supporting the left. Always checking in with the upper body, keeping your face soft, your eyes relaxed in the skull, shoulders relaxed. Thinking of that playful nature that's inside of us. And then if we want to stop, you can stop with your foot on the ground and just rest there, and maybe even just press the left thigh forward. And sometimes the two sides of your body, your two hips, need something different. Or you can begin to draw the right leg into your body, hugging the right thigh in, and just holding and breathing there. You can picture your breath as a color, a temperature, or even a sound. It might be a word for you, some sort of interpretation of what it is you're feeling, and send that word, sound, color, temperature right into the space where you're feeling this. Imagine seeing it in your mind's eye as you breathe in and breathe out. Send it into that space. You can create an affirmation. Breathe in and see it, and breathe it out. Send it. And before we release, if it's comfortable, cross your left back of the thigh on the front of the right thigh. You can draw your knees in and just make some playful circles or rock side to side again. And we'll finish off the left leg with that internal rotation. So both feet will go back on the ground again, but widen your heels because you don't want the left knee hitting on the right knee. So keep them heels a little wider than your hips. And then feel yourself from your big toe side of your left foot. As you breathe in, come onto the big toe side. Think of taking that big, strong left femur bone inward towards the center and forward. So lengthening it and inward. And my right knee is still going to point up towards the sky. And then breathe out and come back. So this internal rotation of the hip, lengthening the front of the thigh, and breathing out. If it feels good, you can let your neck, your head roll. And you can think of doing this movement from your foot. What does it feel like to fall into the big toe side? You could also do the movement from your thigh. Take that thigh bone inward and forward. Or imagine doing it right from your hip itself. Remember when we were doing those hip lifts, you can lift your left hip up a little bit and take it forward. Do one or two more, just rocking and feeling your way through. So this gives us an idea too when we rest, when we stop moving, how far do we want to be? So if your leg is way up in the air, you can put the block right underneath that left knee and support it there at whatever height feels like you're getting sensation without strain. If you want a little bit more, then you can cross the right outer edge of the foot on the left thigh. And for me, I like to do that with a block underneath the right thigh. And just being there, sensing that stretch maybe in the outer left hip or wherever you feel it. Feeling the way you're resting on the big toe side of the left foot. The weight of the right leg. Just gently encouraging the stretch in the left leg if the foot is on the thigh. Or you've got your block. And as you breathe out, that downward energy is taking the weight of your bones into the block, into the ground. Last round of breath. Some of them are harder for me to come out of than others, but I'll try to time it so you have equal time in both sides. So we're going to remove any props, and now we'll do a windshield wiper so you can widen your legs a little bit. As you breathe out, let both knees fall to one side. Breathe in, come back up, breathe out, let both knees fall to the other side. So just letting them fall, not forcing. Think of gravity. The work is on the lifting back up, and gravity's taking them down. And now you're feeling not just the hip crease, but the whole rotation of the pelvis from side to side. And before we come off of our back, we're going to do one more round of bridge pose. So taking your feet more in line with your knees and your hips. This time we'll be a little bit stronger with our bridge. So take the backs of the hands into the ground, gently press the shoulder blades into the ground. So notice how when you push into your arms, it creates a little more force in the upper body too. And then feel your feet. When you're ready, on a breath in, push your feet and your arms, especially the shoulder blades and hands, into the ground. So we breathe in and come up a little bit higher maybe than we were last time. And then breathe out, slowly release, think 25% at a time. And breathe in, push down, rise up. You can still use your breath though. There's still that floating feeling of rising up on the inhale, the buoyancy of the breath. Let's take one last lift. And so notice how high you're coming up and where you feel stable, like you're challenged without too much. And we're going to stay there. So a couple of options in staying there. If you want to hold yourself and be more muscular, you can take your arms underneath you. You can keep pressing the arms. But what I like to do is just take a little bit of a grace period. So whatever height you're at, you can put a block, and you don't want the block on the low back, but right underneath the hips itself, the pelvis, whatever height you like. So I actually like to come up a little higher, but it has to be comfortable for you. You can also go lower. And just feeling that sense of hips being above the heart and the head, whatever height. So you could be all the way on the lowest setting of the block. And if you don't have a block, a blanket works well for this too. So you can be down here. Just letting yourself come into that space. Hips lifted. Just a little bit of perhaps gathering strength in the legs just to hold you there. You can hug your inner thighs. Let the low back relax. Let the hips themselves relax. And come into the front of the thighs. So this is an area that's often in a space of compression and closed off because we sit so much. So the front of the hips. And notice the gentle stretch through the fronts of the hips, the abdomen. You can use your breath to increase that gentle stretch. As you breathe in, notice the skin stretching in and around the front of the abdomen. Think of all your abdominal organs. Send them a little hello, loving kindness, organs of elimination and reproduction. All these lovely parts of our body that are housed in the pelvis. And just coming upside down, letting them change their shape a little bit. Take 3 to 5 more rounds of breath. As you breathe out, the shoulders, the feet can melt into the ground, sensing the support. Just feeling as if you can let the energy of the pelvis just slide into the heart as you're breathing out. When you're ready to come out, you'll need to engage, so push your feet in the ground, hug your thighs, lift up just enough to slowly come down. And that's it. And then we're going to take one more full body yawn, arms long, legs long, arch your back. Breathe in, make yourself as big as you can, and breathe out. Let it all go. We're going to turn on to our left side. And when you go there, if you'd like to take a blanket or something in underneath your head, I could almost use a lab here, but you can put something under your head. Take that left arm slightly forward so you're not resting on the outer arm, but more on the shoulder blade. Stack your knees together and bring your knees so that your thighs are 90 degrees from the spine again, and your shins are parallel to the spine, so or parallel to the edge of your mat. Then feel your right hip and imagine you have a handle on your right hip, and just begin to make circles with the right hip. What you may find is when you start this, it's your leg that's leading, like your knee wants to move and your thigh. Keep the knee and thigh quiet and see if you can imagine stirring from your outer hip. Just taking it around. And you can go in both directions. Just that right hip. And you might feel it at your waist. Notice when your left waist presses into the ground and when it lifts, so we can use the ground for feedback. And we're going to pause, and then we're just going to do a couple gentle somatic hip movements that we do. So the first one, keep the big toe side of the feet together. And as you breathe in, you're going to lift the right knee off the left knee. So just a little bit of a lift, but you'll probably sense these muscles in the outer right hip turning on for you. As you breathe out, slowly come down. So it's like a clamshell. We breathe in and lift, and we breathe out, and we come back down. This is another one where you could start the movement by pushing the feet together, but you could also start the movement, think of lifting your outer thigh. So what I teach in somatics is there's different ways to recruit or turn on muscles. And usually we're either working with gravity by pushing into something, so maybe pushing the feet together, or by pulling away. So you could create that same action of lifting the thigh away. So see what is most comfortable and brings you into your greatest range of motion. And if you want a little bit more of that sensation of strengthening, just hold the leg up there for a few breaths. Be present in that outer right hip. Relax everything else. Breathe out and let it go. So we're slowly settling in. Now we'll do the opposite. So this was external rotation. So these are some of the muscles that take that thigh into external rotation. Now we're going to go to internal rotation. So keeping the inner knees together, you're going to inhale and lift the big toe side of the right foot up. So what you'll feel is your right thigh spiraling inward as you breathe out, come back down. So a few of those. Noticing again what muscles you're feeling. Lift it up as you breathe in. Let it slowly come down and completely release as you breathe out. This one too, if you want to take an end hold, you can hold it up there for a few breaths. The nice thing about the hold too is it gives you opportunity to notice, can you completely relax the left leg, hip, and thigh? So sometimes one side of our body is doing all the work. And if that's the case, reminded that right now it's the right side's turn to be active, to support us, and the left is resting on the ground. And take that back down. Feel free to draw that right leg into your body. Extend your left leg long just for a moment while we're on the ground. We did this on our back side. And we're going to go into a rotation to be here for a moment. So if you want to take a block and put it underneath your right knee, you can. You could also just keep the knees stacked where we were. So this is a double leg twist. You could put the block underneath it and slowly take your right shoulder towards the ground. So I'm going to lose my blanket because I like to have my head flat, to where you're just dropping the right shoulder and elbow towards the ground and just feeling that outer right hip. If you'd like a little bit bigger stretch, you're welcome to extend your right leg out and hold that leg. So that's going to take you even deeper into the outer hip. Let's see what works for you. Take about 5 rounds of breath here. You can sense the way the torso is rotating away from the hips. Just letting the right hip stay stacked and settling on top of the left hip, regardless of what presents itself. Use the floor to support you. Use your breath as a path of mindfulness and staying present in the moment. Just feeling each breath go in and out. Or inviting your breath to fill those spaces where you feel sensation. Last breath in, and breathe out, come out of the rotation. We're going to be switching sides and going on to the right side. I'm going to switch so you can see me a bit better. But you're welcome to just roll on to the opposite side. Feel free to bring your blanket underneath your head. Arm underneath you. And we stack the knees and bring the shins forward so the shins are parallel to the long edge of your mat. Let it settle first. So now the right side is on the ground and supportive, and it's the left side gets to take the center stage. So we're letting the legs fall together, and then first think of stirring that left hip. Just making nice circles. And if it helps to move it from the leg first, you can lift the left thigh up. Think of moving from your knee, initiating from the knee. But eventually see if you can let the left thigh be heavy on the right and make as much of that same movement from the hip itself. So left thigh relaxed, and we're moving from the hip as if you had a handle or somebody had your, if you had a loop, a belt loop, and you're just gently taking that belt loop up and forward and down and back, and you can switch the direction of the circles. Remember to use the ground for feedback. So you might feel it from your left hip moving, but you can also notice the way the relationship of your right hip is changing when it's pushing into the ground, when it's pulling away. And we'll stop. We'll do our clamshell again. So big toes together. Feel that area. And as you breathe in, lifting the top left leg up. Breathing out. Let it come down. Really simple. Stay present to see if you can feel those muscles of external rotation. So in the outer hip, outer left hip, turning on and then releasing. And the right leg is on holiday, staying relaxed. Lifting up and slowly coming down. So we're waking up the muscles. And there's the opportunity to keep moving or to hold up there for a few breaths. Feel the strength of that outer hip. I'm getting a little shakiness on this side. This is my side that needs a little more encouragement to turn on. And let it come down and release. Knees are touching each other. And then as we breathe in, we're going to lift the big toe side of the left foot off the right foot and breathe out and come back down. So I call this one mermaid tail sometimes. Think of having a big mermaid tail and you're spreading your tail, breathing in and lifting up. And notice, so you're lifting your foot, but feel how the left thigh bone is rotating inward and then releasing. Doing a few in motion to feel the muscles turning on and turning off. And then maybe taking that hold, being present in the hold. Releasing down. We're going to go into the rotation for the hold there. So again, you can keep your knees stacked and just begin to drop. What I like to do is draw the left leg in, extend the right leg, draw it in for a moment, and then if it doesn't come down to the floor comfortably, put something underneath it. Feel your left shoulder blade and slowly begin to take the left shoulder blade and arm to the floor behind you, just creating that rotation through your torso. So it's just changing the relationship between the hips and the torso. Left hip stacked on top of the right. Breathing out, keep letting that left shoulder blade and shoulder fall to the ground. If you want that extra stretch, you can extend the left leg long and really feel into your outer left hip. Breathing in, we notice. And breathing out, we just create the opportunity to release any sensations or any thoughts that come into our mind. Just the invitation. And even if it doesn't happen, that's okay too. Two more rounds of breath. And slowly rolling back onto your right side. So take your time. We are going to come up to all fours next. And this is where you will probably want both of your blocks. Hard to come up after all that, right? Both of your blocks, and you can put them towards the front of the mat. So finding your way up, we're going to go ahead and bring that right leg forward right away. And if you want extra padding underneath your left knee, feel free to bring a blanket in, because we're going to be here for a second. I'll do that myself. Bring that blanket in underneath your left knee and bring your right leg forward. And we're just going to inhale and rock. Think of taking your hips forward, and exhale and take them back. So again, you're getting into your hips, but feel the relationship between the legs and the hips. Notice when the front of the left thigh opens up and stretches as you come forward with the pelvis. And then the back of the right thigh as you rock back. And just a little back and forth. Your hands are on the blocks, helping to support some of your weight. The other thing you just want to be aware of is that if your foot is too far back, then when you come forward, your heel will be lifting up. If your foot is too far forward, you're really not going to get much stretch in that back left thigh. So find that happy medium. And just the back and forth. And then even if you're not going to take your hold with your left knee lifted, I'll invite you to roll your back left toe under, lift the left knee. And now as you breathe in, hug your thighs, squeeze them towards one another. So left thigh forward, right thigh back. As you breathe out, drop down. So very simple. Squeeze together as you breathe in. Slowly drop as you breathe out. Or think of that rising up air as you're breathing in. Let it lift your hips up. Breathe out. Gently sink the hips down. And then just like we did before, remember your arms are here supporting you too. And if you're doing this more strengthening, you can take your hands off the blocks. But this is settling in slowly, right? So now inhale, come forward just like we did before, and exhale, rock back. Think of trying to come onto the heels as you exhale and the balls of the feet as you inhale. And your legs are moving, but notice how it's a pelvis movement, a hips forward as you breathe in, hips back as you breathe out. Take one more back and forth. And then we are going to do a pigeon pose in this class. So what I'm going to invite you to do is, if you liked the version on your back, you can absolutely come back onto your back and do what we would call the figure 4 that we did earlier, or thread the needle. Otherwise, from here, we've got the blanket. And what we can do with that right foot forward, so you still have your right foot forward, you can drop your left knee down, please. What you can do is take that blanket and put it underneath your pelvis. So our right leg is going to be bent. And I'm going to put it right underneath the bottom of the pelvis. Right leg bent, big toe side of the foot on the ground. So for some people, this is going to be enough stretch. You could use the blocks to put your hands on. If you don't need the blanket, that's okay too. But it just gives you a little bit of support in the front of the left thigh. So you could be here. Know that typically we go towards straightening the front of the body towards the ground, but if your knees are grumping at you, then you either want to be on your backside, or what you can do is be more sideways. Let more weight rest in your left hip than your right hip. So finding that position, because we're going to be here for about 10 rounds of breath. You can stay up on your hands. If pigeon pose is your favorite space, then go ahead and come down and let go. With or without support, use the ground for feedback. Being present in that right hip. Just allowing the weight of the front side to fall into the leg, the weight of the upper body to fall into the leg. Take 3 more rounds of breath. Breathe in and notice. And breathe out, just sending the invitation to release, to relax. Letting go of anything that doesn't serve you. When you're ready to rise up, please use your arms. Use the strength of your arms to come up. And then if you've got that blanket, you can take that out for a moment. We're going to take both legs just briefly out in front of us. So take them out in front of you. Shake them out a little bit. You might notice the difference between the two hips. And then just making some circles with the body. So we're kind of working our way towards a forward fold, but in a very easeful way. You can rock side to side. Notice as you go forward, the stretch through the back of the pelvis, the back side. And you can continue to move, just making these easeful circles. If it's too much pulling on your low back, same thing can be done with knees bent, and you're here. Otherwise, keeping those legs long, maybe slightly bent. Find a place where you can just fold forward. Block could come in to support your head. We'll take about 5 to 8 rounds of breath here. Just feeling, again, right hip and left hip from the toes all the way up through the back side of the pelvis. Noticing any changes. If you're looking for a deeper forward fold, there are options like taking the block to the front of the feet. You can grab the block, stretch your upper body. So these are just options that you can consider. But remembering that the point of this one is to slowly settle in as we get a little bit deeper into the hips. And the connection of the hips to the legs, the low back. The whole back side of our body, the side we never get to see. Last breath out. Breathe in and come back up. So we'll be doing those postures on the other side. If you used the blanket last time under your knee, feel free to do that. The left foot will come forward like a lunge position. The right leg is back, perhaps on the blanket. You can use your blocks again. Set that left foot up so it's not too far back to where the heel's lifting, not too far forward. And breathe in and draw your pelvis forward. Breathe out and take it back. And I also like to imagine that as I breathe in, I'm doing that little bit of arch through the back. So drawing the shoulders back, you'll feel your back and spine shorten. And as you breathe out, you can round your back, pressing the hips back. Letting your breath guide you, the speed and the pace. one more round there. And then you can continue down here on your knee, or if you'd like, roll that back right toe under, lift the right knee up. And then as you breathe in, hug your left and right thigh towards one another, towards the center of the mat. Breathe out, slowly fall down. Or think of breathing in and lifting your pelvis, and breathing out and letting it descend towards the ground. Arms are there to help support some of your weight. But feel the strength of your legs as they lift you, lifting the pelvis up, and slowly bring you down with gravity. And we'll change that motion just a little bit, more of the front to back motion. So now breathe in, shift the pelvis forward. You might even feel your left knee come forward of your toes. As you breathe out, shift the pelvis back, just like we did when we were on that back right knee. Coming forward and coming back. Sense what muscles are stabilizing you, particularly in and around your hips and your pelvis. And then we're going to do that pigeon pose on the other side, otherwise known as Ekapada Rashakapatasana. I can still say that one. Whew, that's a mouthful. So when we do this, feel free to go back onto your back and do thread the needle again. So again, that's more the version of you're on your back, left ankle on the right thigh. And this is a really nice one if your knees are at all crabby. So you can be here where we were earlier. Otherwise, we use the weight of the body itself to deepen the posture. And in that case, I like to bring in a blanket. So left leg is going to be your forward leg. And the blanket can go right underneath the bottom of the pelvis, or think it's sort of supporting the front right thigh. And then your left foot, pinky toe side down. So when I'm coming into it, I'm hugging my thighs in to support and protect the muscles until I get where I want to be. So if you don't want to keep your torso square with the floor, you can fall more to the left, and you might even put more blanket down there, and you can be here and just get a gentle stretch. Otherwise, as we square off to the floor, you're going to get more of a stretch. If you have the ability to bring your shin forward, by all means do it. I'm part of the tight hip club, so I don't go there. But take your pigeon pose, fully supporting your body. Noticing the open space in the right thigh, left hip. And your breath is the presence. You can enter your body at will if you'd like and feel sensation. But I also invite you to just create an image, an affirmation, and let your breath carry that image or affirmation into your body, regardless of what you're feeling physically, any sensations. You can create your own playful, comfortable, safe party just through imaging, creating that affirmation. Sending it into the spaces in your body where you feel the sensations. And we're just using the weight of the body, the torso, slowly falling into the left leg. Last few breaths. So much sensation and stillness. Take your time coming up. Use your hands. Press into the ground. You can roll to your left hip first and then swing your right leg around. Take your blanket aside, but keep your blocks handy. And actually, you may want to keep your blanket as well. So we're going to come down. And after that one, first stretch the legs out. Do that full body stretch. Or full body yawn, reach, arms overhead, legs long. And this one, I like to just imagine you're walking and take your hips and push through one heel and then the other heel. Be a little more playful on this last one. Lengthen through one leg and the other leg. Pet the puppy. Yes, he's a puppy. 9 months old. He's got some growing to do. But I think he's got this yoga thing down. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. So we're going to finish in a reclining Baddha Konasana, which hopefully is a crowd pleaser for all of you. But if not, I'll give you a couple of different options. So the first thing is the soles of the feet are going to come together. The closer your heels are to your buttocks or the base of your pelvis, the more stretch you're going to get in your inner thighs, so in your groins. So feel free to take your heels further away if that's more comfortable. You can also support your knees with blocks. So that's really important. You want to be able to fall down. So my rule is usually, because this is our Shavasana, is that wherever my legs naturally fall, I lift them about an inch above that. And then that's where I support, because then I know that there's no discomfort. I'm not fighting myself yet. I'm still getting a nice opening. And then what you may want to do once you find your space is take that blanket, especially if it's a nice big blanket with a little bit of weight to it, and just take the blanket and put it across the front of your pelvis. So like you're putting on a little protective barrier. You can cover yourself up. And you can go back to just placing your hands on your abdomen if you'd like, wherever they're most comfortable. Breathing to the belly. One of the lovely things about this posture is the way that we allow our feet to touch, as if they can communicate with one another. And just notice that. The way the soles of the feet are touching. You can tell each other about their previous lifetimes and where they've been. And sensing your ankles and your lower legs come up to your knees. Take a moment just to be present in the knee joints. Acknowledge your knees with loving kindness. And coming up through the thighs, the fronts and backs of the thighs. You feel that subtle stretch in the inner thighs, allowing the outer thighs to relax and release into whatever's underneath them. Can you allow the weight of the legs to just accept the support? And then back into landing in our breath in the belly. And imagine that breath encompassing the entire pelvis, all the way around the hips. Breathing in, there's that sense of vitality and expansion, even in and around all of the abdominal organs. Breathing out, we just allow gravity. Feel the release into the earth, the support. Being and allowing. And the breath out can be like the earth element at the Muladhara chakra. Breathe out, we feel the weight of the bones. Be present in the weight of the bones. Breathe in, sense of the water element in the Svadhisthana chakra. Notice the way the breath mobilizes the body, even the soft flow, the movement of the skin. You're welcome to stay here for as long as you'd like. Offering that grace and acceptance to your beautiful pelvis, the hips. And when you're ready to come up, just first sense the way the feet are touching once again. Gently press the feet together to create some engagement and strength in the inner thighs. You might move that blanket off of you. So slowly hug the thighs up together. And then from there, you can decide if you just want to roll to one side, if you'd rather hug your knees in first and do that little happy, playful dance. And taking your time coming up to a seated position, by all means, roll to your side. As I come in to say thank you, particularly to my patrons and all of you that sponsor me and donate. And please subscribe. I really appreciate having all of you with me. And I hope this was a lovely settling into your hips. Peace, joy, love, and light.